Right. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. Thank you for joining us. Sorry we're getting a couple minutes later start than we wanted. But today we're going to be talking about how do you empower performance-based EHS culture. Oftentimes with EHS, we're talking about compliance, like just meet the bare minimum. But one of the really cool things that we're going to be talking about today with Robert of US Concrete is how do you take it even a step further? How do you use technology to really drive intelligent decision making? How do you think about going beyond just basic compliance and really enabling high performance within the organization, not just in EHS but outside with operations, production, field staff? So super exciting topic, talking about technology and how do you use that from a metric standpoint and really enable a performance-based culture. Before we dive into it, a few housekeeping items to cover. One, please submit your questions at any time. We're going to have time at the end to answer your questions. Both Robert and then Maya from Mappistry is also here, and they'll be available to answer your questions at the end. So please submit throughout. We'll queue it up at the end. And then also, we're going to record this and send out copies of the slides of this. So you'll be able to share with others if you want to review anything or talk about it internally. So to introduce our speakers, as I said before, Robert is the Corporate Environmental Manager, and I believe I saw a title change too, covering facilities also. He covers almost 200 or more than 200 locations for US Concrete across North America, covering everything from quarry operations to ready mix. It's a very diverse group of facilities. And I think that poses some challenges, but some of the stuff that Robert's sharing with you today is like how he was able to step into this role, and even really before he was in this role, driving that change, using technology to enable not only change internally, but also elevate the performance of the entire company from EHS to operations. Our other speaker today is Maya. She's our VP of Customer Experience. She works across all our diverse set of customers, making sure from day one they're getting value out of the Mappistry platform and ensuring their continual success. And she's worked very closely with Robert, both on the initial implementation and setup, as you're going to hear about today, but also ensuring continual business value and how do we constantly push and improve the product. And then for those of you that don't know me, I'm Ryan Janik. I'm one of the co-founders of Mappistry, and I'm going to be giving a quick intro, a little bit of background, setting the stage, and then turning it over to Maya and Robert today. So to kick things off, I've actually got a question for the audience here, and I'm going to launch a poll. And it's around technology. Where do you think software can have the biggest impact within your own programs? Because one of the things we're going to be talking about today, and Robert's going to share, is like, where exactly has that impact been? Some of the metrics behind it. Where can you use technology throughout your organization? So we'll give everybody a couple more seconds. I know for the West Coast folks, it's still morning. Takes you a little bit of time to read through all the responses. East Coast folks, you're getting ready for lunch. But we'll give you a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds to submit the polls. And then I'm going to share some results just so the audience knows what you're putting in. You can have more than one area that you can have an impact for. Number one, just centralize records. How do we get everything in one place? Number two is around like ensuring that basic compliance, and then minimizing workload or need to hire. I would challenge the audience in what you're going to hear from Robert today is how do you take it even a step further? How do you push things even beyond just ensuring no missed tasks? How do you get into the analysis piece, the proactive versus reactive? How do you make really intelligent EHS decisions? All right, so to set the stage, we're going to talk a little bit about a market shift. And one of the interesting things is probably over the past, it's been moving rapidly over the past, say, 5 years, but I think even over the past year or so, we're seeing rapid change in a number of areas. And overall, past 5-10 years, big shift from paper, pretty straightforward, simple regulatory area, not a ton of oversight, to a world today where the speed of change is greatly increasing. So that it's accelerating. And I think if, as I talk to folks kind of on the ground and in leadership positions in EHS, one of the things over the past 6-12 months has been the pace of change, what's flying at you. And that is going to come from a bunch of different areas that we'll talk about. But there's more of a need to be connected. There's more complexity, so rapid regulatory change. And then sharper consequences. And these consequences, even over the past 6 to 12 months, have changed, where it used to be third-party groups or regulatory agencies. Those still exist and are growing, but there's a new aspect that we're seeing from like shareholder pressure, external stakeholders, investors, that type of thing, around sustainability reporting, around performance with environmental and safety metrics, like how is your company performing? How are we using it not as a cost center, but how do we fuel the business side? So a couple things driving this change. One, resource constraint. EHS, often seen as a cost center, often, you know, some of these duties are put on operational staff, but we've got less and less people with more and more regulatory pressure. So more staff time constraints, more financial constraints. At the same time, we've got an explosion of regulatory complexity and need to collect data. These things all can lead to, you know, really a crunch on EHS. The other thing is the enforcement. We're seeing more from environmental justice. There's focus on it, making sure community engagement. This is one of these other external pressures. We're seeing, you know, a doubling of OSHA investigators. We're seeing more enforcement from EPA and DOJ, and even specific task force or divisions created within them beyond the standard ones. And then a growing rise to be audit ready. You know, how do we use software to be ready at any point for virtual inspections from regulators, which we saw the rise of with COVID. So how do we build that digital trail to make it easier? Because that enforcement readiness is a hot topic today. And then just to give you a kind of a sense of some of the penalty costs, this is pure penalty costs, and maybe doing some talks later this year around some of the financial impact from stakeholder pressure, ESG metrics, those type of things. But, you know, minimum in the 30,000, up over 100,000 on some of the air compliance. And then you've got internal costs around consultants and attorneys, you know, which can be 2x that. So with all of that from a market kind of pressures, what we are on a mission to do at MAP is really enable and empower organizations to make intelligent environmental and safety decisions. And it's really that drive to be proactive, not reactive, make it easier, make environmental and safety move from a cost center to a performance center. And I think one of the things that's been great about working with Robert is he is extremely passionate about this and very effective at driving that change in a very short period of time to enable that performance-based culture. So a couple of things in terms of who uses Mapistry, you know, obviously US Concrete, and we've done webinars and had other folks on here talk about how they use Mapistry. But really, our goal is to give the best software to these customers so they can proactively manage risk. So with that, I'm going to flip it over to Maya and Robert to take over and talk about how US Concrete and Robert, you know, drove change within the organization adopting technology.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Give me 1 second to share my screen. Can you see it all right already?
Yep.
Perfect. Great. So, Robert, really excited to be able to talk to you again. The first question that we have on board is when you first started this new role, how did you decide that you wanted to champion technology on your first day?
Well, being in the environmental field for the last 15 years and doing everything on paper, Excel sheets, printing things out, then putting them on clipboards, losing things, not being able to find documentation during inspections and stuff, it really became apparent to me that that's not just my issue, right? That's everybody's issue in the environmental realm. And so with right around 200 sites that I was going to be managing, I needed to be able to make sure that things weren't getting lost. More importantly, that I had a view from, I sit in California and we have facilities all across the United States and North America. I need to be able to understand that, I can see what's going on in the facilities. I wanted to see where the problems existed, so I could assist people. So if I understand that, okay, this person's consistently, or a site is consistently not getting forms done, they need some help. And what kind of help can I offer? Can I offer them training? Do they understand the programs that they're being required to comply with? Do they understand the forms? And so it really helped me kind of get an idea of who was properly trained. And that was one of the things, Mapistry led to a lot of stuff, but one of the things that we really learned was that there was a big lack of some training on some of these programs that we're using. Also the real-time data. So being able to look at a site and say, okay, today this is what's going on at the site. Like, it's raining in Virginia or something on this exact day. I'm not in Virginia, but it's beneficial to know that it's raining, because then I can reach out and say, hey, how's your freeboard going? Are you making sure that you guys are taking note of the time of the start of the storm and the stop of the storm and the flow? That's all things that need to be done. And then also getting ahead of issues before regulators find them. That's, I think, one of the most important things is, being able to find the issues before somebody else finds them. And right now, we're not just dealing with regulators. I think everybody understands that third-party and nonprofit groups are also, chewing at our heels. And we want to be in compliance. It's not because we don't want to be, in trouble. It's because we want to do the right thing. And this really helps me, ensure that we're doing the right thing across, North America and all of our business units.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like you were looking to make change all throughout the process, not just to reduce the number of sites that you have to visit or how many times you hop on the plane. It's benefits for all.
Absolutely, and what has happened is we've actually realized so many benefits that were never even anticipated on the front end. And we'll talk about some of those in a few minutes, like the gap analysis and stuff like that.
Yeah, perfect. Moving forward, you have a lot of needs. You identified a lot of pain points. Why did you decide to bring Mapistry to US Concrete?
One of the big things that I said recently, or just now, is that paper is burdensome. It's old. Listen, like, if you're out doing stormwater sampling and that if you're using paper, it's wet, right? Okay. And so, you're doing your sampling observations, you're trying to do them in your truck or under an umbrella somewhere. But having them on a tablet, I can easily get that stuff done. You can't lose it, right? Once it's in the cloud, it's in the cloud. It's easily retrieved so that during an inspection, and it's really one of the big things that I've noticed is when you bring an inspector over and you show them, okay, this is Mapistry and this is how our documents are stored, their attention to the rest of your site is completely changed. They are really like, wow, this site, they've got it dialed in. I probably am not going to spend as much time here as I normally would at another site that didn't have a system like this. But accountability for us was really needed. And the accountability to just make sure that the plant managers and the individuals responsible all the way up to the top of the chain, the VPs, that their business units are getting the stuff done that they need to do. With being a publicly traded company, there's a lot of public information out there. And so if somebody in one business unit at one site isn't doing something correctly, it could affect the entire business and it could affect our shareholders' value as well. So that's something that we really needed to get ahead of. And then putting everything in one place. We have so many different regulatory agencies around the United States, and even going into OSHA and MSHA, because we're both general industry on the OSHA side, and then we are on the aggregate side. We're governed by MSHA. So being able to put all those inspections into one application, and then being able to retrieve metrics from it. So understanding, how is this certain business unit doing on this set of forms compared to this other business unit? And what are some of the difference between some of these people? So the disconnected information that we had previously, you couldn't do that. You were looking at, you would look at a site and that's really all that you would see. You couldn't compare to other sites.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like you segmented real well into the next question of what it was like after implementing Tapestry. I guess, do you have anything else to add besides that visibility and the metrics and how you've been comparing regions to regions?
Well, one of the things that I use it for, and I think a lot of the regional managers are surprised by this, but I look at every single inspection that comes through, and I will reach out. If something looks fishy, if it looks like somebody it's no longer pencil whipping, right? It's mouse whipping. If somebody's mouse whipping these forms and everything is perfect at every site every month, then I send a note over to the regional manager. I say, hey, listen, it doesn't look like that. As much as I want your site to be perfect, there's no such thing as a perfect site, and I believe in the industry. And so make sure that you're getting on your people and talking to them about how to do this. And then I think that we ended up using it for a lot more stuff. We ended up using it for MSHA workplace exams, safety audits, and stuff like that. And then, using that analytical data to further improve ourselves, to question what we're doing and improve on how we're doing things.
Oh, what has been the response like on the site level?
Let's see. At first, everybody was very hesitant, right? Nobody wanted to implement software. They saw it as a huge hurdle to overcome. But I think that at this point, now that we've really gotten our forms dialed in, I think that everybody welcomes it. It's an easy thing to use. It's a great tool. It takes some of the burden out of just compliance, right? Because they're not looking for a binder where they have all this stuff stored, they have an inspection. It's just right here on Tapestry. And so it kind of takes that element out of the back of their head where if I have an inspection, I'm not going to be ready. They're going to be ready. All the information is right here for them. It makes inspections much easier, no-brainer situations, which lets them do their job, which lets them have more confidence in their day-to-day activities without constantly worrying, okay, am I keeping track of this? There's reminders, there's everything set to help you succeed.
Awesome, thank you. It sounds like there's been some pretty positive outcomes, which makes me really happy because I'm here to implement the software too. But I guess to summarize, what have been some of your favorite memories or best outcomes of this experience?
Let's see. I think transparency in real time, right? Like, I love going to sites and doing inspections. I'm not a big office person. I really like to be out in the field. And so what I will use is I will go to a site and I'll pull up their most recent inspection. And sometimes it was as soon as the day before or the day that I was at the site. And I'll be looking through it and I'm just finding things. I'm like, okay, so I'll take it to the plant manager and use it as a teaching opportunity and say, hey, listen, we can do better than this. We can, I understand that you might have seen that hazard and you took care of it immediately, but it really looks good if you load it in Tapestry and then we track it to closure because it shows that you're actually doing stuff at your site. You have measurable activity going on. And then one of the other things, the gap analysis, like I was talking about before, I don't think we had ever done a gap analysis at US Concrete as a whole. So this enabled us to do that, which had incredible outcomes for, document storage and understanding where things were. And then top-down accountability, right? So everybody from the VPs to plant management to site personnel became a lot more accountable because we were able to really put the metrics in there and say, hey, listen, like this region or these sites are just not getting their forms done. These forms are required by federal regulations, state regulations. It must be done. And that really, really helped us people, okay, well, they're on board now and they're getting things done.
Cool. And you talked a little bit about how you were able to see some transparency and visibility into your program. I have some slides that just summarize that you're able to do some transparent collaboration, but I also wanted to show off the way that you're able to do these inspections in Tapestry and the way that we've been able to utilize them in our business reviews too. Do you have, I guess, anything to say about the progress of completion of inspections and the completion of tasks? Because I know that it wasn't like everyone on board doing it 100% on the first day. It did take some effort. It does take like a village to make sure that you are getting to the place where you need to be, where you want to be. How has like this kind of visibility on analytics helped you drive both in the field and with like, your VPs?
Well, I think that, what it really helps to do is understand some of the personalities that you're working with, right? So like I said, I sit in California, and we have, an eastern region, mid-Atlantic, central region, and then we also operate in the Virgin Islands of British Columbia. And I haven't met some of these people ever. And so it really helped me to understand a little bit more about who they are and how they run their program by looking into their sites and seeing, okay, is this are the facilities that this person is in charge of are they never doing their inspections? And that helped me to reach out to a VP and say, hey, listen, you are far out of compliance, and I've done everything I could. We have to figure out another solution. It's at some point it's a learning tool, and other points it becomes a carrot and a stick. And that's a beneficial thing, because no matter what, we're going to be judged on these inspections. They don't care. The regulators don't care who the plant manager is or what they're going through. They want to know that these things are getting done. And then, one of the big things that we've found is that the ease of use and the training were super important. If people are properly trained on these forms and their regulations, they get in there and they get it done. But if they get it done and they're not actually finding conditions at the site and they're not entering that in, there's no point in the data. And so we really started driving, okay, go in there and use this as a way to measure yourself, to understand your progress through your site. And that really has helped us a lot.
Thank you. And now just transitioning over to like the gap analysis that you mentioned beforehand, how did Mapestry assist you in that analysis for the program?
Okay, so for gap analysis, obviously to set up Mapestry, we have to do document collection phase. For 200 facilities, that's a lot of documents, right? So you figure at least one air permit for every facility, most likely a stormwater, water use or water allocation permit, and then, like SPCCs and other plans like that. So you've got a lot of different plans that you can be pulling together. Well, what we found is that we didn't know where a lot of this stuff was. I was originally in the West region here in California, and I had everything just digitized. That was the way I've done it. But then moving across the country, what we realized is that was not the same process. And there was a lot of documents that everybody knew we had, but nobody could find it. Nobody knew where it was. And the last thing you want to do is reach out to regulators and ask them if you can have a copy of your permit because you can't find it. And so there were some things there where we had, some little learning curves that we had to embark upon. But what it helped us do is really create a good document storage system, and also understand that there's some things that are way out of date. Like, SPCCs, every 5 years you need to be looking at them. But we had some that were, a decade old. And you can imagine that those SPCCs being a decade old probably weren't inclusive of any updates to equipment. And so that led us to, okay, well, now we actually need to update some of these maps, because we're looking at maps that haven't been looked at in 7 years, and the tank's not even there anymore. It's and another tank's replaced it, or we've done something else. The facility might not even be open. So it really led us to, understanding a lot more about our individual permits, and then, kind of planning around that and creating, a path forward. Okay, we need to make sure we're doing these updates, tasking for sites that have SPCCs, making sure that we have a 5-year update task in there, so that we can make sure we're getting this stuff done.
Well, yeah, that sounds like it was very, not scary, but it could be intimidating to not know what you know about.
It was definitely daunting. I mean, because one of the first things when I pitched Mapestry to our CEO, Ronnie Pruitt, and all the VPGMs of the company, they were like, okay, well, if we don't have permits, what are we going to do? Are we going to, tell the regulators we don't have permits? And to me, it was an easy answer. It's like, well, we're going to file for the permits, right? But then the pushback on that, well, then they might get us for not having a permit. Listen, so it's gonna come to light someday. It's better you go up to your regulator and say, we have realized there's something wrong here. than them coming in and saying, you have been operating for a decade without proper permits, right? It's a different type of interaction that you'll have. And so we got on the front side of that, where we came to regulators in some situations and said, listen, we messed up here. This permit lapsed and we didn't renew it. Let's work together to get this done. And we never once faced an enforcement action when we came to them and brought it to their attention. Vice versa, if they ever came and said, hey, listen, this source was not permitted, of course, there's an NOB that follows, there's some type of enforcement action.
Awesome. And then pushing us forward, how can you give some examples of like how you specifically use the data within from Mapestry within US Concrete?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I'm always looking at is the analytics dashboard to understand who's getting their forms done and who's not. And I generally focus, I try to spread it out. I give accolades and kudos to the people that are performing, and then I offer help or reach out and see what I can do. Is there more training? Do you need more people? Do you need more resources? Tablets. So for our MSHA sites, we're doing workplace exams, daily workplace exams. And what I've realized is that it's hard for these guys at these giant quarries, these guys and girls at these giant quarries, to get out there and do their workplace exam and then come back and complete it in the office. So what we've been doing is we've been looking at getting tablets for everybody to help them get their performance up, right? Because I've noticed they're not completing their stuff. So this helps us understand that technology might be a solution in this area. Also, being able to understand right then if something's wrong. I will get inspections back that note a deficiency but have no corrective action. So immediately I send that to the regional team and I CC the inspector, the person that did the inspection, and I just quickly say, hey, I would like you to assign a task and put a due date. That way we can track this to make sure that it's taken care of. And then, right, you can start seeing as people are using this, who's doing well and who's really embracing the technology and the champions of the technology. And you send out messages like, hey, I really appreciate your hard work in doing this. Pass that on to this plant manager. I understand this is a new system, but they're killing it. And it goes a long way. That little bit of recognition, it really helps drive just the use and engagement in it. And then, because of our tasking this year, our task completion rate and time to complete tasks wasn't really where I wanted it to be. Next year, what I'm really trying to push forward is that every inspection needs to result in at least one task. And a task is a corrective action. It's anything that you can see that needs to be done at the site. And I think this will help really drive the continuous improvement at our facilities, and also engage more people. I think that the employee engagement within this, I want to go to a site and I want everybody to know about Mapestry. That might just be me, but that's how I, if I can drive that engagement with even like site contributors and stuff, I think that's beneficial, because then they're always thinking in the back of their mind, when I see something, I say something about it and I fix it.
Yeah, you're connecting all the dots within US Concrete, and you have a huge team. So kudos to you for being able to give recognition to the folks throughout the nation.
Yeah.
Jumped around a little bit, but can you tell us more about like how we've been able to partner up with you?
One of the big things was that immediately we decided to utilize Mapestry for safety as well, not just environmental. A big part of us using the technology was your ability to really wrap in safety audits for us. Because right now at US Concrete, we do a monthly safety audit at every single facility. You have to do one a month, and it goes through, pretty much the OSHA high topic areas, electrical, machine guarding, ladder safety, fall protection, lotto, stuff like that. And so the ability for you guys to pivot and help us with that was incredible. And then when COVID hit, right? COVID hit 3 months after I started this position, and everything was locked down. And I was planning on going, on a road show to take this software to everybody. But instead what happened is we rolled out a COVID BMP, plan builder, so that we could create COVID plans. Because in California, you had to have a plan for your site that talked about how you were addressing COVID, what your BMPs were going to be. And then what we did was we also instituted a daily BMP check at our facilities for COVID. So do you have hand sanitizer? Are the facilities being cleaned? Do you have floor markings? Split second thing that you guys rolled out, which was incredible. It really helped us a lot. We're finally rolling, we're finally kind of turning off the BMP inspections. I still have people completing them. We also, the SWIP builder, it's right, there's a lot of money goes out to create these SWIPs, these SPCCs. You spend money on consultants to do it. Well, the SWIP builder, the SPCC builder has enabled me to bring it back into my pocket and get it done in-house. And also, it's not just bringing the money in, it's educating the employees, the staff, the plant man, the regional managers. This is how you do a SWIP. This is how you do an SPCC. So, I'm training my replacement here in California in the West region, and, having him do the SPCC builder, he knows a lot more about what goes into the process now than he would by just having the consultant do it for you. The forms, that was huge for us. So getting the workplace exams done, Mapistry really stepped in and through a lot of feedback, a bit of a big cycle there, we were able to accomplish some good forms and are finally, on the tail end of that. And then the last thing was, I think I already touched on this, but it was the safety audits, right? That was super huge. Mapistry, I think, is classically seen by people as environmental software, but to us, it's our site safety software as well. It takes care of that aspect for us as well.
And I imagine it also helped, like within US Concrete, to be able to have some investments from groups outside of your environmental groups too.
Absolutely, because now it's not just me and the environmental team, it's me and the safety team, me and the facility safety team, working together. And so what that's enabled is a little bit more cross training than we've had before, where we had safety people and we had environmental people, and very few that kind of were cross trained. But now I have safety people looking out for environmental issues and environmental people looking out for safety issues constantly. And I think it's really brought up the business as a whole.
Well, thank you so much. I think that might be my last question for you, unless Ryan had any follow-ups. I saw that you dropped this again.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got questions from the audience, and I guess I would encourage folks to continue to submit them. But real quick, wanted to look over and put Maya on the spot a little bit on the customer success side. So just to give, software is new for a lot of companies. And one of the things that we're particularly passionate at Mapistry about is that partnership that Robert talked about is how do we enable our customers to really be successful? And a big part of that is customer success. So I guess, Maya, if you want to give how has customer success, your role, your team's role, really worked with US Concrete on the other side to enable not only getting them set up and helping Robert go through the gap analysis, but since then, how have you been working with US Concrete?
Yeah, I'll start off by saying it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been great being able to meet with Robert and his teams. But the way that I think about customer success at Mapistry is really just a part of a whole at Mapistry, because I believe Mapistry is very customer centric, and customer success is just part of that dedication to make customers successful, not only with our software, but with their own goals. And so I think our role is to be active listeners, to learn what Robert and his team needs from Mapistry, and be able to act as that advisor, that translator between software and EHS group goals. And so from the beginning, once our new customer closes, we'll be right there to kick things off, to walk them through onboarding journey, not just any onboarding journey, but our goal is to make it efficient and a pleasant experience, because like Robert says, it is a lot of time and a lot of effort. So we do want to make it as painless as possible. And so we'll do that by coming in with a plan, but also being open to flexible timelines and advice from what Robert and his team needs and what anyone needs really. And then from there, we'll be there every step of the way. So we'll be there for the document collection and the project setup, there for the site trainings, and we won't just like throw you to the wolves after we set up the projects. We'll be there for the active feedback loops, and I think that's what really has helped Robert and I be successful, because we can learn from Robert, but we can also learn from the experiences of his site users. We can also learn from his own leaders that not just do the inspections, but also have to manage their own set of sites. And so you asked like how we do that. And so it can be as basic as just jumping on a call, visiting him, but it can also be things like adding Robert and his team members to our customer advisory board. That way they can like network and talk to other customers and create a community where people can learn how they've found success in their own ways at Mapestry. And we also have more formal reviews, so quarterly business reviews. Once a quarter, we'll come together to take a look at what Robert's goals are, take a look at the metrics from Mapestry, those analytics that are so important to tie everything together, and have a discussion about like what's gone on right and what we need to improve. And sometimes there's action items on my end that I need to like promise Robert to complete, like re-editing an SPCC form or retraining a new site. But sometimes there are also action items that Robert finds on his own end. And so that's been really helpful, just an open communication plan. And yeah, and so I guess the last piece of it, which is not the least important, but it is important, is the product education too. Being able to generate product articles, product videos. We were able to create some custom education for the safety audit form that Robert launched at the beginning of our journey, but always, I guess, being open to the feedback of the customers is what I keep finding myself going back to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think one of the things we really strive for is how do we make it as customer centric as possible? As Robert, you talked about, you know, we need things change, you have different needs, how can we react, create new products for you? How do we take that advice and feedback? The QBRs is a good example, I think, of the partnership. Maybe Robert, if you want to talk a little bit about like, how has that been from your side on QBRs, and how do you use that information internally with, you know, sharing accolades for those area managers or highlighting to VPGMs, to the board, et cetera? How have you used it?
You know, I love the QBRs. I think that it really does a great job of kind of just, it's a highlight reel, right? And it's a good and the bad. It's, hey, these are the successes that your team has achieved in this quarter. These are your roadblocks and your failures over the last quarter. And what it helps us do is kind of rework what we're going to do for the next quarter. Okay, let's focus more effort on task completion. We're already nailing down the monthly safety audits. We're getting 100% of those done, but our SPCC forms aren't getting completely done. So let's make sure we don't start neglecting the safety audits, but let's start talking about the SPCCs more. And then once you get that, then you move on to the next one. Your tasks, like I was just talking about, making sure task completion. It's task completion. Tasks go both ways. It's really beneficial to get them completed, but it's just as beneficial to know who and what is being assigned. That's the huge part of it. If nothing's being assigned, there's nothing going to be completed at all. So that was really big for us. And then, you know, personnel issues. You know, understanding are the people that really want to be here, and understanding that there's some people that might not really be what we want, right, in our company. And we've done that. That was one of the things that Mapestry inadvertently helped us do, was kind of weed out some players that were not on the team. They said that they were on the team. All their words, everything that they ever said to us was, you know, I am full team. But then when you would look at their regional stats, it was very, very apparent that they didn't really have the drive or want to put forward the effort. And so it helped us make some very key management decisions. And that's huge. You know, it's this can be used so many different ways, right? It can be used to, you know, propel people in their careers. It can also be used to make, you know, very hard decisions on your management structure and who's handling your teams. I also, you know, have really been using it for these the site improvement program here at US Concrete to make sure that each site is supposed to during each quarter find 3 hazards: slip, trips, falls, machine guarding, electrical safety, fixed ladder safety. You know, 3 during each quarter. That was a pretty ambitious goal for, you know, 200 sites. It doesn't seem like it, but I've learned that it definitely was a little bit ambitious. But we're doing it. What's great is that the feedback from the people that have been doing it, this is so easy. And we've gotten some really great results. And what we've learned is that a lot of the fixes are sub $50 fixes. A lot of these safety fixes, these things that we're correcting, are less than $50 to correct. And that's a slip, trip, fall injury that could be a major lost time incident, you know, a workers' comp. It could unravel into so much more. But $50 in paint took care of it, or $50 for a roll of chain took care of the issue. So there's a lot of different things. And then for the board, you know, we're taking these QBRs, and we're even more granular than that. We're taking monthly analytics, and we are giving them to our board of directors. And so they're able to see, you know, firsthand what we're achieving with Maple Street, what region is really on top of their stuff, what region is falling behind. And it helps them, you know, push from the top down. Okay, we need to get things under control. We need to make some changes. So.
Yeah, awesome stuff. And I think that identification of a $50 solution to solve tens, hundreds of thousands of potential problems is like, that's the shift from reactive mode to that proactive side.
Yeah, everybody thinks it has to be some major change, and it's like, no, just you could paint a curb, you know, make it high vis yellow, or, you know, even some piping, just throw some paint on it, and now it's a visible hazard, and people are less likely to have an incident, you know, when they come across it. And that's a huge thing. You know, slip, trips, and falls are the majority of OSHA or workplace injuries, right? So that's why it was the #1 thing that we focused on this year during the first quarter. It was low-hanging fruit, right? And we also wanted to do a ground approach, right? Starting from ground level, where 99% of our employees work, to then moving up to where, you know, we have less frequency of interaction with moving parts and stuff like that, like ladders. You know, being in the ready mix industry, though, ladders are huge to us. We have people climbing up ladders all over the place, on job sites, at the office, or at the facilities, everything. So it was last on our list, but it was definitely not the least important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess one of the questions is, a lot of this is very metric driven. I mean, you talked about performance-based culture, good and bad, using metrics. How have you used, from an analytics standpoint, the software to really drive those? How often are you in the analytics or looking at analytics?
I'm in almost every single day, and I think it annoys some of the, you know, regional managers, because I'm like, hey, you know, make sure you're doing this. I can see that you're slipping back here. And then I also like to just kind of view the heat map, right? That shows me, okay, I have this area that's starting to turn red that usually isn't red for SPCCs. So let's make sure we keep it in the green. We don't want it on the bad boy list. And so I use it all the time. I use it for so much. And then, you know, just, you know, putting together other type of safety presentations, you know, it really helps to go back to the analytics, and I can say, okay, well, this is what people are saying. They're saying that there's no hazards at their facility, yet we had this, you know, injury that occurred last week. Why was this not found? You've been saying for 11 months that there's no slip, trip, falls at hazards at your facility, but somebody, you know, walked into a hole that's been there for 2 years and nobody ever marked it. And so we're using this to drive more, you know, more accountability. And I think that's super beneficial. When we're at a work site every day, we get used to the hazards that exist. and we become complacent about it. You know, we don't think about it. But these forms are really meant to help you shine a light on that stuff, clean it up, get it taken care of, and then move on and make sure you're safe.
Cool. No, that's great. Great at like actual use of, not just theoretical use of.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we've got about 10 minutes left, so let's move into the questions. So one of the initial questions is, how do you use it on like mobile devices today?
You know, so I have a Samsung phone and it works great. The original Mapestry app wasn't the easiest to use, and I had a lot of feedback about that. And so I passed that feedback on to you guys, and all of a sudden, you know, a few months later, we have a whole new app that's really easy to use. It's intuitive, and it's one of the big functions I think is being able to step outside of an inspection form, because I'm not doing an inspection every single time I'm at a facility. I might be going to train somebody, but I notice that there's a hazard. And so I pull out my phone and I add a task to that site, shoot it off to the responsible party with a due date, and there we go. It doesn't have to be a big deal. That's what I keep on telling people in the organization is, you don't have to make a lot of work out of this. This can be as simple as, hey, I noticed something, I assigned it to somebody, and now it's going to be on our record to complete. So I think that that's, you know, that was really important. And then moving over to the tablets, we have all of our West Coast facilities have tablets. They love them. They're out there all the time doing their inspections. They're taking pictures of things, of deficiencies, you know, with the tablets in real time, then tasking them to somebody. That's super important. You know, before, when you're doing it on Excel sheets, how are you going to enter your picture on your Excel sheet? All of a sudden, you have these giant rows. It's making the formatting weird. When you print it, you're printing half pictures on pages. It doesn't make sense, right? And so then you go to this, and you're able to actually print out what you're doing. And then the new analytics dashboard has really helped us kind of drill down into all that. So all this work I'm doing on my mobile, now I'm able to really pull up granular level detail from the analytics dashboard. So I think mobile's been great. Being able to do inspections on your device is a huge win. It's always in your pocket. I had some people say, well, it's unsafe to walk around with something in your hand. And I'm like, but aren't you walking around with a clipboard in your hand to do your inspections anyways? And so they're like, that's a good point. So it's always on you. It has a camera. You know, I think it's a great way to complete inspections.
Yeah, sounds like you're speaking from experience on the photos in the Excel.
Everything. I mean, listen, after 15 years in the industry and, like, you know, induction to EHS by fire, like I've definitely learned the hard way and then moved on from that. And so I'm really happy to finally be here where I can pass on all of my hard-learned lessons and try to help other people avoid it. Okay.
Yeah. No, I thought you were going to say you're introduced to Excel and Word as your introduction to EHS for doing everything.
No, thank God thank God I knew Excel before, but that was how it was. It was like, hey, go ahead and do these inspections in Excel. And I'm like, so I print this form out, and then I have to take this form and then, you know, and re-enter the data. And so all of a sudden it's a process that's like, okay, go out and do the inspection, then come back to the office and then do data entry, and then send emails to the people that need to handle this stuff. That's a lot of work, you know. That's a burden.
Yeah. So follow-up question: How did the emails work? Like, you do an inspection, how did those emails work?
Okay, so there's notifications, right? And so I have all my notifications turned on for every single form that anybody at US Concrete can fill out. It's like in British Columbia, we have like wildlife crossing forms. Like, if you see a bear in British Columbia, you need to mark down that there was a bear by the conveyor, you know? And so we get email notifications. And so it's a system where if you are tasked with something, say a corrective action, right, or you completed a form, you will get a notification that says, hey, you know, so-and-so has completed the form. But you'll also get reminders. You'll get, hey, Robert, there's going to be rain in your area starting tomorrow. There's a high % chance of rain. You know, and that lets you know I should prepare my sampling kits. I should stay ahead of this, make sure my pH meter is ready to go. I've got buffer solutions all lined up, all this stuff. You should already have that anyway, but it just gives you that little thing like, okay, I'm gonna, the night, today before I leave work, I'm gonna put out all my sampling kits so I'm ready to go in the morning. And then, you know, the email reminders, hey, you have these upcoming tasks. It's a weekly reminder setup where, hey, you have these tasks that you need to take care of this week. It takes the guesswork and the remembering out. Our plant managers that are responsible parties for a lot of this stuff, their number one job is to get concrete to customers at the spec required and at the time required. So when you lump in all this environmental and safety stuff, things get dropped. It's hard to drop something if you have a constant reminder telling you, hey, get this done. You can click here, go into the form, take care of what you need to do.
Yeah, what's been the reaction from plant managers on that? Because their number one job is get concrete out the door or turn big rocks into little rocks.
Yeah.
To borrow from one of our other customers' favorite phrases. What's been their reaction to it? I'm sure you have a lot of resistance, but what's been the reaction?
And there was a lot of resistance, and I think it's just like change. Many people don't like change, but oftentimes change is for the better. And so what I think people realize is, oh wow, like I can go in and I can walk my site and have my phone and do my form really quickly first thing in the morning when I get here, and that's it. I'm done. I'm done with it for the day. I don't have to worry about going back to my office, filing it, taking down the binder, opening the binder, all that stuff, those minute little details. And okay, so you just opened your binder to hole punch your form and put it in there, and then there's an emergency, and all of a sudden you're gone, and something happens to your document that you just filled out. That doesn't happen anymore. So it takes a lot of this, the worry out of the back of your mind that, am I going to have everything when an inspector comes to the site? So I think overall the plant managers now and the responsible parties now see the major value add as a whole. When they've had inspections, they're like, this is so much easier than opening the binder and sorting through, you know, okay, are these sampling results from, you know, 2017 or 2021? Like, what am I looking at here? It's really helped that out.
Yeah, and I guess one other question from the audience on that is, can you download your inspections?
Yes, and so that's you know, that was one of the things that one of the first questions was, hey, how do I retrieve this? So you can download them into PDFs, you can download things into CSV files, and then so right, if you need, say you're doing, you know, throughput monitoring for something, and you need to do calculations for air quality, you can download the CSV, or you can actually, I believe at this point, the emissions monitoring, we can set up the calculations in Mapestry to do the calculations already. But if you're not that far into it yet, you can just download the CSV, plug it into your sheet, and get your calculations that you need done. It makes things so much easier. And once, personally, once U.S. Concrete is able to integrate some of our back end with Mapestry even more, I'm going to be using this for TRI reporting. I'm going to be tracking all my TRI reportable materials, all my admixtures with nitrates. I'm going to be tracking them using Mapestry so that at the end of the year, I don't have to reach out to these plant managers and ask them for this information that they track very, very poorly usually. So there's a lot of great things with the downloadable, function.
Yeah. And that integration thing is something that we're constantly adding and growing. And how do you expand, make it even easier, and just remove the human out of the whole
Yeah, like, the one thing that we've been working on is trying to get the plants turned on or off for the day, because some inspections, if you're not there, you can't do the inspection, right? And so we want to make sure that that's something that we're able to do. I look forward to one day being able to actually do that. It really helps. It makes the day-to-day operations and the form entry, inspection completion, it makes it easier.
Yep. We've got a couple minutes left. Last question for Maya is, how long does it take to set up?
That's a big question. It depends totally on what comes through. So like with Robert, we had 200 sites. We ended up breaking it up into 3 phases, and COVID hit, so that was a bummer. Definitely impacted the way that we needed to onboard, but I think we maneuvered it right. But at the end of the day, I think it took us like about a year, probably a little bit less than that, to get everyone, not just the project set up, but everyone comfortable and actively using it, actively consistently using the software. And I think with our journey, it's been an open loop of feedback. So we're constantly iterating on things for US Concrete, making sure that we're growing as US Concrete grows. So trying to help out with new problems that arise, like new SBCC plans that are needed, and trying to find software solutions for that, as well as like acquisitions and things like that. So constantly working.
Yeah, and I think that timeline it's under a year to get everybody like actively using it. I think it was about 6 months to like set up and launch in a multi-phase rollout, which is fast. And I think, Robert, one of the things I noticed when you came in is like you had experience with other software and just knowing what the industry, multi-year rollout phases just to get set up, let alone adopted,
Yeah.
I think you championing that of like, it's going to be set up in 6 months, and by the end of the year, everybody's going to be comfortable, adopted, rolling with it. Was really awesome.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, coming from General Electric, I had used Gen Suite before. I was one of the people that kind of helped them navigate the world of Gen Suite. It took a lot, and that was just for one site. So for us to get as many sites as we did set up in the time that we did, the people trained and comfortable using, and I was the biggest bottleneck in the whole process, was the ability for me to gather documents and then make sure that they were sent over to Maya. That was the biggest bottleneck. If we had a really great document collection and storage system prior, then I think we would have had like maybe a 3 or 4 month setup on these sites, and then 6 months total to time to train and everything. So is our gap analysis that really kind of slowed some of that process down, and we're still not through. We're still not fully through that. We still don't have every form that we need to have. Unfortunately, that's just when you have 200 sites. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
I feel like we experienced that in real time too, because the first phase we had West region, and we were able to do that region within like a month and a half.
Yeah.
And it was super motivating, and it was great that we all realized that like, not every region is on the same boat. So we were able to see the difference in document collection there too.
Yeah, it made all the difference in the world. So for anybody out there listening to this, digitize your stuff. It's just, paper is great. Have a backup paper for everything, but make sure you have everything backed up and digitally, because then if you go through the document collection phase and you start to build out sites, it makes it so much quicker.
Well, we can keep chatting forever on this. I know this is our favorite topics for the three of us.
Yeah.
We got
into it.
If folks have questions, I think, Maya, we've got everybody's email on the slides there, but we'll follow up, send out the recording, and follow up with all of you from the webinar. But really appreciate everybody joining. Thank you very much, Robert and Maya, for jumping on this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Great.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.